Silence becomes powerful the moment you stop using your words to ask for love, validation, or clarity from someone who chose to walk away. When you step back and stop chasing, you create a level of emotional distance that forces her to confront what she never expected, a version of you who doesn't need her presence to feel grounded. She believed that leaving you would break you, that it would create chaos inside you, that you would fight for her attention the moment she pulled away. But what she didn't prepare for was your neutrality, your calm, composed, unbothered silence that says more than any long message, any emotional explanation, or any attempt to convince her ever could. This is the moment your silence transforms from something she thought would hurt you into something that starts to hurt her. When a man stops talking, it hits differently, especially when he used to be expressive, available, and emotionally generous. That shift is powerful because it signals change. It signals that your energy is no longer tied to her decisions. It signals that your life has entered a phase where her approval isn't the oxygen you breathe anymore. She begins to feel the absence of the comfort she once had, your attention, the good morning texts that stopped, the reassuring presence she thought would always be there, the emotional safety net she assumed she could fall back on. Suddenly, all of that is gone, replaced by quiet confidence. This silence is not passive, aggressive. It's not a game, it's self-respect. Your silence communicates something deeper than spoken words ever could. I am not waiting for you. And that message begins to echo in her mind as days pass, and she receives nothing from you. Not a reaction, not anger, not sadness. Just space. That space becomes heavy for her because it forces her to compare the man you were when you cared to the man you are now that you've detached. She sees that the emotional access she once had to you has been revoked. That shift shakes her because women often don't realize the value of a man's presence until it disappears completely. There is strength in silence because it requires discipline. It requires emotional maturity. It requires you to resist the instinct to fix something that's no longer yours to fix. Silence allows you to preserve your dignity while also allowing the situation to reveal itself without your interference. And that revelation is powerful. She begins to see that your life didn't collapse after she left. In fact, it kept moving smoothly, steadily, confidently. Your silence becomes proof that you are capable of standing on your own, that you are not dependent on her for emotional stability. This new version of you commands respect because you're not begging for closure, you're not seeking validation, and you're not fighting for a place in her life. Your silence becomes the evidence of your growth, of your maturity, of the inner work you've done. It makes her reflect on what she walked away from. It makes her question whether she overestimated her importance in your world. It makes her see that while she thought your silence would be weakness, it turned out to be your greatest strength. And more importantly, silence gives you space to reconnect with yourself, to heal, to grow, to rebuild your confidence, your identity, your purpose. You stop pouring energy into someone who left and instead redirect that energy into becoming the highest version of yourself. That transformation is felt even from a distance. She begins to sense you slipping farther away, not because you're hiding, but because you're evolving. In the end, your silence hurts her more than her leaving ever hurt you because it exposes the truth. You didn't lose anything. You simply stopped giving. Growth in silence is one of the most powerful transformations a man can experience because it shifts the entire dynamic from emotional dependence to emotional evolution. When you remove yourself from the noise, distractions, and emotional chaos of a breakup, you create a space where clarity begins to form. You start to see your life not through the lens of loss, but through the lens of opportunity. And while she may think your silence means you're hurting, stuck, or unable to move on, what's actually happening is far more surprising. You're becoming someone stronger, sharper, more grounded than the man she walked away from. In the beginning, silence feels uncomfortable. It's natural to have the urge to reach out, to explain, to fix, or to prove your worth. But as you settle into that quiet space, you begin to realize how much of your energy was being drained by trying to maintain a connection with someone who no longer valued it. That realization becomes the first step toward growth. You stop pouring into a situation where your effort wasn't being matched, and instead, you start pouring into yourself. Your mind becomes clear, your emotions stabilize, and your focus sharpens. You begin to upgrade silently without announcing it, without posting it, without trying to make anyone notice. She expected you to be stuck in the same place emotionally, still attached to the version of her that left you. But while she carries the comfort of believing you would always be there, your silence is rewriting that story. Slowly, it begins to dawn on her that the man she walked away from is no longer the man who exists today. She starts to see hints of your growth, maybe through mutual friends, maybe through the way you carry yourself online, maybe through the absence of the old patterns she expected from you. What she once took for granted becomes something she now starts to miss. The man who used to be available is now unavailable, not out of spite, but because he's evolved past needing her attention. Your silence allows you to grow without interruption. You hit the gym with more discipline, not to make her jealous, but to rebuild yourself physically and mentally. You focus on work, goals, and ambitions, things that give your life meaning beyond relationships. You reconnect with your purpose. You start learning, improving, elevating your mindset. Every day, you become a better version of yourself in ways that she never expected. And this growth is louder than any words you could have said to her. It's the kind of growth that can't be ignored, even if she's trying not to think about you. As you evolve, she begins comparing the old you to the new you. She remembers the man she left behind, emotionally open, maybe even too available. And now she sees the man you are becoming, focused, distant, harder to reach, harder to influence, harder to replace. That contrast creates a sense of regret she never anticipated. While she thought leaving would reduce your value, your silence reveals the exact opposite. Your value increased. She expected you to diminish, but you transformed. She expected you to chase, but you disappeared. She expected you to remain emotionally dependent, but you became emotionally self-sufficient. The emotional impact of that realization hits her harder than she imagined. She begins to question whether she ever really knew you. She starts to wonder if she misjudged your strength. Your growth becomes the mirror she never wanted to look into, because it shows her what she lost, not just the man you were, but the man you became. In the end, your silence doesn't just create distance, it creates evolution. And that evolution becomes the very thing that forces her to feel what she once thought you would feel forever. The sinking realization that she walked away from a man who outgrew the version of himself she thought she could leave behind. When you finally pull back and choose silence over chasing, something shifts in a way she didn't expect and wasn't prepared for. She may have assumed that no matter what happened, no matter how she acted, no matter how she left, she would always have a place in your life. She believed you would remain emotionally available, waiting, hoping, and keeping the door open for her return. That assumption gave her a sense of comfort and control, because in her mind you were the backup plan. You were the emotional safety net she thought she could fall back on if her other choices didn't work out. But when you stop reaching out and stop reacting, when you detach completely and stay silent, that illusion shatters. She realizes for the first time that you are not an option waiting on the shelf. You are a man who can walk away without looking back. Your silence communicates something far more powerful than any words ever could. that you're done participating in a dynamic where you give everything and receive nothing meaningful in return. When you stop trying to prove your worth, you remove yourself from the pattern of showing her that she is the prize. Instead, your silence makes her see that you are not someone who can be used for emotional reassurance whenever she feels lonely or uncertain. You are not the person she can run back to when her other choices disappoint her. You are not the fallback she can return to out of convenience. Your silence destroys the safety she believed she had, and that loss of comfort hits her harder than the breakup itself. The truth is, many women assume that the man who cared the most will always be the one who stays available the longest. They think his patience is endless, his loyalty unconditional, and his heart permanently open. When you choose silence, you prove that assumption wrong. You show her that your willingness to love deeply does not mean your boundaries are weak. You show her that your kindness is not the same thing as being naive. You show her that your emotional investment doesn't mean you'll accept being treated like an option. Silence becomes the line you draw when words have lost their meaning. As days turn into weeks and she notices that you still haven't reached out not to check in, not to apologize for something you didn't do, not to chase, she begins to feel something she didn't expect. Uncertainty. That uncertainty quickly turns into curiosity, then into confusion, then into regret. She wonders why you aren't reacting. She wonders what you're doing. She wonders who you're becoming without her. She wonders why the man who once cared so deeply has chosen complete emotional distance. It becomes clear to her that you have accepted reality and moved on, and that realization is painful because it forces her to confront the fact that she is no longer a priority in your life. The most powerful thing about your silence is that it shows her you are not waiting for her to come back. You are not putting your life on hold for someone who left. You are not staying in the position of the emotionally available backup plan. You have reclaimed your value, your dignity, and your energy. That shift creates a wave of respect mixed with regret that she never saw coming. She begins to see you as a man who honors himself more than any relationship. And ironically, the moment you refuse to be the backup plan is the moment she realizes she lost someone irreplaceable. In the end, your silence isn't punishment. It's a declaration of self-worth. It's the moment she understands that you are no longer the man she can run back to. And that realization hurts her far more than she ever expected, because losing someone who refuses to be an option is the deepest loss of all. Respect is earned through presence and boundaries, but sometimes the absence of both can speak louder than anything you could say. When you step back and embrace silence after a woman leaves, you are no longer giving her the emotional access she once had. You are no longer responding to her texts, calls, or attempts to manipulate your attention. You're no longer chasing validation from someone who didn't appreciate it. And in that quiet withdrawal, something profound happens. She begins to recognize the man you truly are, the man she once respected, desired, and perhaps even took for granted. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting her own choices back at her, showing her what she lost and what she underestimated. Women are naturally drawn to strength and self-assurance. When a man demonstrates that he can exist independently, that he can thrive without seeking approval or clinging to her presence, it triggers a deep recognition of value. Your silence is the ultimate form of nonverbal communication. It tells her without words that your time, energy, and emotions are not freely available to be taken for granted. She starts noticing how composed you are, how focused your life has become, and how unshakable your confidence remains. That observation alone rekindles respect because it reveals a level of self-mastery she may have never fully acknowledged before. As she witnesses your evolution through absence rather than interaction, she begins to remember the qualities that made you admirable in the first place. She recalls your patience, your emotional intelligence, and the way you carried yourself with integrity. She realizes that those qualities were never dependent on her approval. They were inherent to who you are. By detaching silently, you reinforce the idea that your value is self-determined, not granted by anyone else. This recognition forces her to confront her own behavior and reassess the dynamics that allowed her to take you for granted. Suddenly, the respect that she may have lost or ignored comes rushing back because she sees it reflected in your actions, or in this case, your deliberate inaction. Silence also creates an aura of mystery and intrigue. When you no longer react immediately, when you no longer reveal your every thought and feeling, you become less predictable. That unpredictability naturally draws attention because it challenges the expectation that you are always accessible. She begins to wonder about your life, your routines, and your mindset. She questions what it is about you that makes you so calm, so composed, and so untouchable. This curiosity, fueled by genuine growth and self-respect, is the foundation of renewed admiration. The more she observes your emotional detachment, the more she perceives the strength she once underestimated. Moreover, your silence sends a powerful message about boundaries. Women respect men who know their worth and refuse to tolerate disrespect or neglect. By withdrawing, you demonstrate that your emotional energy is precious and not a tool to be misused. Your silence is not just absence, it is an assertion of identity. It tells her that the man she knew is still the same in his integrity, but evolved in his self-respect. That combination, familiarity mixed with undeniable growth, is compelling because it forces her to acknowledge that she cannot dictate your value or control your emotions any longer. Ultimately, your silence becomes a teacher. It educates her about the consequences of underestimating you, about the depth of your self-worth, and about the strength that comes from not reacting impulsively. Respect is not demanded. It is earned through actions, presence, and boundaries. And in this case, the absence of your reactions, the calmness in your withdrawal, and the unwavering focus on yourself communicates more powerfully than words ever could. She begins to respect you not because of what you say, but because of who you are and who you have become in your quiet strength. Through this deliberate silence, she learns a lesson she cannot ignore. The man she once left is now a man she cannot take lightly, and that realization restores respect in a way that words alone never could.